takeaway for the Sixers and Celtics series is playoff Harden. I mean, I have seen several playoff series where James Harden maybe he struggles from the field, which he's had his moments in this series as well. But for the most part, it seems like historically his narrative has been he takes a step back in the postseason. Maybe he gets too tired, or maybe he just doesn't excel the way he does in the regular season.
Yeah.
This series, though, and honestly, even a little bit of last series, game one and game four were some of the best James Harden games I've ever seen from him, especially game one. He scored what, 45?
Yeah.
And then this game, he scored, I believe, also 40. Um, just banging it from the field. He's being a contributor. And I think part of the reason why the Sixers won last game was because of James Harden's performance. James
Yeah.
Harden's been incredible in these postseasons. And I hope in the event that the Sixers move on, if they're able to make it to a finals and James Harden finally gets his title, can we stop with this playoff Harden stuff? There's another player that we'll get to later who deserves this playoff blank narrative, but playoff Harden, I don't think he exists anymore.
Yeah, and I feel like Harden gets a lot more unnecessary hate than other players. Where Tracy McGrady is one of the highest talk regarded players in NBA history. People love him. Never made it out of the first round. Carmelo Anthony, same thing. Never made it out of the second round. James Harden's only problem was that, oh god, he ran into the greatest team ever. I'm sorry. Like, he ran into the Warriors with Steph Curry when they were coming alive. The Warriors had a better team. They had a better head coach. They had better defensive players, and they had better players around him. And James Harden never got that second star. Steph Curry always had Klay Thompson and Draymond Green and Steve Kerr. It's like, yeah, God forbid that James Harden beats everyone else and dominates every other team in the West except for the greatest team of all time. Oh, sorry. That's horrible. And then they had Kevin Durant, and then he was making PJ Tucker, Robert Covington, Eric Gordon, older Chris Paul, Trevor Ariza. He was making these guys look amazing. Went on one of the greatest offensive stretches in NBA history through those stretches where he was tearing it up. Won an MVP in Houston, had a chance to beat the Warriors, and then, yeah, has James Harden had moments where he could have shown up and he didn't in the playoffs? Yeah, that's fair. But he also has never had that second star to take the pressure off of him to do that in the playoffs. He's at CP3. He got hurt. And when they were up 3-2 on the Warriors, CP3 stays healthy. You get to the finals that year. James Harden, been to the finals with OKC, was one of the bright spots as the sixth man of the year. And then he now has passed Kevin Durant with this game for 40-point games all time in the playoffs. So James Harden now has more 40-point games than Kevin Durant. And then we're seeing him in Philadelphia. This is the first time where James Harden has an equal where he can look eye to eye with Joel Embiid. Some people are going to say Joel Embiid's better than Harden. When they're at their best, Harden's better. I'm sorry, but Harden's stretch in Houston is better than anything Joel Embiid's done in his career, where he was tearing it up. And he got 33 points this year, but the player who was making the plays down the stretch, the player who made the last shot, was James Harden. When James Harden doesn't play well, the 76ers team isn't the same. But to say that James Harden just doesn't perform, he's a joke in the playoffs. He ran into the Warriors, and then this is the first legitimate chance he has with Joel Embiid. So these next three games are going to be huge for his legacy, and this is probably the Eastern Conference Finals. I feel like both of the Boston and Philadelphia have more talent than Miami, but I feel like the conference finals will definitely be a dogfight. But this series deserves to go seven. I have a feeling the Celtics will still win in six, but James Harden still has a lot to gain this year. I don't think he has too much to lose because a lot of people have already made up their mind. But the fact that James Harden, oh, he's not a playoff performer, he ran into the Warriors every single year and they had a better team. It's one thing if you have a better team and you're losing series over and over again, but James Harden has never been the loser when he's had the better roster.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think the playoff Harden thing's a little overblown. If there's one stain on his legacy, it's the 27 straight missed threes that the Rockets had, game
Yeah.
6 and 7.
The Spurs game.
Yeah, the Spurs game was pretty brutal. He's had some pretty tough playoff performances, but at the same time, like you mentioned, with surpassing Kevin Durant for most 40-point games, it's like he's also had some pretty spectacular performances, and you
Yeah.
saw it here in game one and game four. Now, game two and game three together, I mean, those were some pretty bad games, and you're going to get that with Harden. Same
Yeah.
goes as what you're going to get occasionally with Steph. You're going to get that. Russell Westbrook in his prime had those games as well.
Yeah.
So it's like for somebody who's a shooter, you don't always make your shots, and it definitely had some bad games. But at the same time, James Harden's one of the best offensive scorers of all time. And what I really like with him and Embiid, it's like those conversations about Kevin Durant and Book and Devin Booker being the next Kobe and Shaq. I think there's a chance that if they can make it past the Celtics and they make it to the finals, they win. We could talk about a Kobe and Shaq comparison with James Harden and Embiid. You have a physically dominant center who's the most dominant center of the last decade. And then you have an all-time great scorer like Kobe, like James Harden. So
Yeah.
I think like, we'll dive into the Booker and KD comparison for that. But I think James Harden and Joel Embiid, I think there could be a Kobe and Shaq comparison there.
Yeah, because if the Sixers get to the finals, you would have Embiid versus Jokic or Embiid versus Anthony Davis. If the Lakers, so that's a wash. I feel like Embiid's better than Davis, and then him and Jokic. I feel like production wise, it's a wash. And then you go the second guy. All these series, James Harden's better. James Harden has played better than Jaylen Brown. When he showed up, he's been the best two in the playoffs this year
Mm.
because he was able to step up and be the one.